Lucas and Wood County under tornado warning.
Tornado warning in northern.
I hope your mom's awake. She's gotta be awake.
5 miles from here, a tornado has just touched down. It will become the most devastating tornado to strike Ohio in over a decade, and will kill 7 people. Arriving into town just before midnight, no one will see it coming. No pictures will be taken of it. Scarcely anyone will see it. No one knows what's coming, but a lot has happened to get us to this point. To fully grasp the story at hand, and to fully understand what is about to happen, we must first go back to the morning of June 5th, 2010. The day began in a very uneventful fashion. Temperatures were warm and the air was muggy, but to those in northwest Ohio, severe weather was only a distant thought as they looked up at the bright blue skies that covered the region. However, meteorologists across the Midwest were well aware of the chance for tornadoes that existed across the region that day. The Storm Prediction Center had outlined a moderate, or level 4 out of 5 risk of severe weather, stretching from near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to the Iowa-Missouri border. While this risk was driven by the threat for strong, damaging winds, a 10% tornado risk was also in place across much of the risk area. Forecasters had expected this for a couple of days as a low-pressure system associated with a strong cold front began to move eastward into the Great Lakes region. This low-pressure system ushered large amounts of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico into the Midwest, coinciding with the brutal summer heat and ample potential energy for storms to feed off of. Alongside this, plenty of wind shear was present in the atmosphere, all combining to create an excellent environment for the development of strong supercell thunderstorms. By 7 p.m., storms in Illinois had already begun to produce tornadoes. Over the course of the next few hours, several additional twisters would touch down across the state, including 2 EF3s that impacted areas near Streator and St. Anne, respectively, and a deadly EF2 that impacted the town of Dwight, taking 1 person's life. A series of tornadoes in the Peoria metro area triggered a tornado emergency, the most significant warning that can be issued by the National Weather Service. This was the first such warning issued in the state's history, putting those in the path on high alert. Thankfully, Peoria itself was spared from any tornadic impacts. The neighboring community of Elmwood, however, was not so lucky. The city was struck by a well-documented and photogenic EF2, which tore a path straight through the town, destroying several homes and businesses as it crossed through the city center, lofting debris high into the air and rolling several vehicles before exiting the city. As these storms continued moving east, the Storm Prediction Center elected to issue a large tornado watch covering most of central and northern Indiana, as well as western Ohio and extreme southern Michigan. This watch was issued due to the development of additional supercells, along with the imminent arrival of the Illinois cells into the region, several of which were still producing tornadoes. At 10:10 p.m., Doppler radar indicated a group of these cells moving towards the Toledo, Ohio metropolitan area, right as this watch was issued. Driven by high CAPE values, strong shear, and a likely interaction with the lake effect boundary, these storms would rapidly begin organizing. The National Weather Service quickly began monitoring them for severe and tornadic potential, and at roughly 10:30 p.m., the first tornado associated with this supercell would impact areas outside of Liberty Center, Ohio, destroying several homes and attaining an EF2 rating. This tornado would remain on the ground for around 7.5 miles before lifting as the storm began to pass over the densely populated Toledo suburbs. While the Supercell would produce an additional EF1 near the city of Whitehouse, the Twister would remain over primarily rural areas, sparing the urban portions of the metro area from significant damage. However, meteorologists both on air and at the National Weather Service office in Cleveland would grow increasingly concerned as rotation would continue to increase in strength as it crossed over the city of Perrysburg. Around this time, a bounded weak echo region, or a donut hole as it's commonly referred to, would appear on radar directly over Perrysburg, indicative of a strong, intensifying updraft, and a common precursor to the development of strong tornadoes. Shortly after 11 p.m., what would go on to become a monster EF4 would finally touch down just outside of Perrysburg, adjacent to the Ohio Turnpike, its eyes set directly on the small rural community of Millbury, Ohio. Millbury, Ohio is the epitome of ordinary. A small Midwestern town with an affinity for football whose population barely reaches above 1,000 people, its history has long been characterized by farming and quiet living. Located only about 8 miles from the downtown of the much larger neighboring city of Toledo, Millbury's laid-back country lifestyle has long served as a retreat for those in the region looking for an escape from busy city life. The only restaurant here is a Subway on the corner of Main Street and State Route 51. The next closest thing is the village pub, which, despite apparently not serving food, still manages to attract a fair amount of patrons any hour of the day. The most prominent buildings in town are its 3 churches, dedicated to Saints Peter, Paul, and Mount Calvary. While the area's residents may belong to different religious groups, they're all united in their love for God, country, and their shared community of Millbury. Here, it's not out of the ordinary to see a tractor rumbling its way down Main Street in the middle of the afternoon, or for the occasional tumbleweed to roll in from the adjacent cornfields to take a stroll through the village's well-manicured lawns. It's your quintessential rural Americana, isolated but not alone, small but full of people with big hearts. It's not perfect, but it's home. Driving through town, it's hard to believe that the tornado ever happened. It's been almost exactly 14 years since this town was hit, but you'd never be able to tell it even occurred if you were just passing through. But for those that call this place home, the memories of that day are still fresh in their minds. After what I'm about to tell you, you'll soon understand why. As you listen, I invite you to put yourself in the shoes of those whose stories we'll be sharing. Try to understand what they must have been feeling as this disaster unfolded. It won't be pretty, but their stories deserve to be told, and their memories deserve to be carried on. With that being said, let's return to the night of June 5th, 2010. The time is 11:20 p.m. Shrouded in darkness and essentially invisible, the Twister would touch down right along Oregon Road, right on the outskirts of Toledo's urban sprawl. The Twister would touch down inside of the friendly village mobile home park, but thankfully would produce only minimal damage, NWS surveyors later determining the tornado was of EF0 intensity in this area. At this point, the NWS had no idea that a tornado had touched down at all. Due to the nocturnal nature of the Twister, confirming it was a very difficult task, as storm spotters and locals were unable to see it through the dark. Thankfully, though, a tornado warning had already been issued for the area several minutes prior. That early warning proved to be very important for the residents, as shortly after striking the mobile home park, the tornado would plow into the southern portions of the town of Moline at EF2 intensity. Damage was primarily limited to destruction of roofs and siding, with several trees in the area also being toppled. Thankfully, no significant injuries or fatalities were reported. Unfortunately, however, that would not remain the case for long. Continuing the twister's trend of rapid intensification, it would strengthen to EF3 intensity as it crossed State Route 795. Several homes along Moline Martin Road would be completely destroyed as the narrow tornado passed over them. Irwin Welling, an 87-year-old man, resided in one of these homes. He sustained serious injuries during the tornado and unfortunately succumbed to them 3 weeks later, the tornado's first fatality. Irwin fought valiantly in World War II alongside his fellow soldiers. Taken as a prisoner of war, he suffered behind enemy lines for 11 months, before finally being set free. A fighter his entire life, he was the definition of a hero. After exiting Moline, the tornado would impact Toledo Executive Airport, one of 2 airports serving the Toledo metro area at EF3 intensity. Several hangars and other buildings on the airport's south side would be completely destroyed, as would the neighboring Lake Township Police Department. Here, several dispatchers and first responders were monitoring the phones as the storm grew closer and closer. Just as reports of a tornado being on the ground were coming in, the twister struck the building head-on. It was reported that several dispatchers remained on call assisting local police and EMS as the twister tore the structure apart around them, metal and wood flying every which way within the vortex. Miraculously, all those working within the police department survived. The building around them, however, was a total loss, with the roof completely torn off and significant damage dealt to the walls. Police cars parked outside were thrown and tossed about. One was found wrapped around a tree. Another EMS vehicle parked adjacent to the department was thrown an estimated 1,000 feet by the tornado's winds. Just as the tornado struck, a family of 3 were on their way home from dinner. While driving down State Route 795, they suddenly spotted the tornado, the twister illuminated by sporadic power flashes as it tore through Moline. Quickly, they pulled into the police department's parking lot and rushed towards the front door, just as the tornado overtook them. 20-year-old Bailey Bowman unfortunately lost her life during this ordeal. Amazingly, her boyfriend and her infant son managed to escape without serious injury. Bailey is remembered by all as a loving mother and a caring companion, one who was unfortunately taken from the world far too soon. As the tornado would continue to move eastward, it would slam directly into Lake High School. Much of the school was destroyed, including the gymnasium, where less than 24 hours later the class of 2010 was scheduled to hold their commencement ceremony. Several school buses parked outside would be tossed around like toys, crumpled up and turned on their sides in the school parking lot. A testament to how narrow the twister was, the adjacent Lake Middle and Elementary schools would be virtually untouched by the twister's carnage, with only minor roof damage done to both structures, while the entire high school was a total loss. While the twister was impacting the school, just 2 miles north in Walbridge, a pair of locals were camped out atop the Interstate 280 overpass. Hearing something that sounded like a distant roar, they knew something was amiss. Deciding to record, they looked to the south, and captured the tornado as power flashes illuminated the sky, suddenly letting them see the monster in the distance.
Oh, see it? There's a tornado, dude! Oh, it might be coming right at us. It's a tornado. Call 911 right now. Just call 911. Look how big it's getting, Bob! Oh, dude! What's it doing? What the fuck's it doing? There's somebody here. What's coming that way, dude? We gotta get back to the car, huh? I'm telling you, right?
As this video was being taken, 56-year-old Kathleen Hammitt was driving down Route 795 going westbound. Her 2 daughters were following closely behind in their own car. The trio were on their way back home after visiting Kathleen's husband and her daughter's father at Bay Park Hospital in nearby Oregon. They had attempted to leave the hospital at around 10:30, yet had been stopped by security due to the tornado warning issued for the aforementioned twister near White House. Finally, shortly after 11, they were allowed to leave, thinking it was safe. They had about 40 minutes left on their commute as they came upon the I-280 Route 795 interchange. Tired and drowsy after an exhausting day, nothing seemed out of the ordinary as the first few droplets of rain began to pitter-patter on their windshields. All of a sudden, the radio came alive with an EAS tone. A tornado was on the ground in Wood County. What happened next was sudden and came with little warning. The wind suddenly picked up, and then the sisters watched the tornado pick up their mother's car. Tossing it roughly 50 yards into an adjacent field. Without any time to react, the sisters soon found themselves within the twister's vortex. Before they knew it, they too found themselves in a nearby field. But they were okay. First responders soon arrived on scene. Once they did, the sisters received the news that their mom hadn't made it through the storm. Kathleen was a fervent believer of Christ, and an amazing influence on all who came in contact with her. In a statement, her daughters stated that their mother was the most amazing, positive, and spiritually driven woman in the world. After crossing I-280, the tornado would traverse through empty farmland, remaining consistent in intensity as it did so. Less than a mile away was the town of Millbury, where security cameras in town captured the tornado as it approached, power flashes illuminating the twister in the dark. By this point, news that a confirmed damaging tornado was on the ground approaching Millbury was actively being transmitted to local television stations. News stations just a few miles away in Toledo had been covering the storm for nearly an hour. Tower cams in downtown Toledo would capture heavy rain and lightning flashing through the skies above, while viewers would look on, oblivious to the carnage unfolding a mere 5 miles away. Those within Millbury would soon experience this tornado firsthand, as by 11:30, the twister had entered the west side of town. Several homes along Bradner Road and Cherry Street would be impacted at EF3 intensity, resulting in near-complete destruction of several residences. Among the homes impacted in this area was that of the Kranz family. The family was sheltering in the basement as the twister approached when Ted Kranz, the family patriarch, exited the basement to save the family dog. He never returned. A dedicated father, he made an immense impact on everyone he came in contact with. His daughter Katie was the Lake High School class valedictorian. She was scheduled to speak at the commencement ceremony the following day. After crossing a railroad, the tornado would tear through the heart of Millbury, crossing Main Street where it attained winds in excess of 170 miles per hour, EF4 strength. Several newly constructed homes in this area would be flattened, with almost nothing but bare slabs remaining in some cases. One of these homes was the house of the Walters family. Here, 36-year-old Mary, 37-year-old Ryan, and 4-year-old Hayden all lost their lives. 7-year-old Madison was also in the home, but lived. The family was beloved by many in the community and made friends everywhere they went. In fact, earlier that night, they were doing what they loved most, eating dinner with friends and loved ones, enjoying the company of others. As the tornado continued moving eastward, additional homes on Hill Drive and Woodville Road would suffer similar degrees of damage. After this, the twister would begin to slowly weaken as it crossed North Fostoria Road into Ottawa County. EF4 and EF3 damage would be documented in this area. Several homes would be completely destroyed, with others suffering extensive damage. As the tornado approached the town of Clay Center, it would abruptly lift as it reached the edge of the town's quarry, putting an end to a 9-mile path of destruction. While another EF2 would tear through the center of Dundee, Michigan a few hours later, the rest of the night remained largely quiet, bringing peace back to the disaster-riddled area. The tornado was roughly 400 yards wide at its largest and took the lives of 7 people, injuring many others, several of whom required hospitalization in neighboring Toledo. Damages from the twister were estimated to be in excess of $102 million. The tornado was also the deadliest and most destructive to strike northwestern Ohio in decades, and the deadliest to strike Ohio in general since 1985. While the destruction and loss of life was immense, it easily could have been much worse if the National Weather Service hadn't done such a marvelous job warning those in the path. With it being the middle of the night, and with the tornado shrouded in darkness, it was extremely hard to get visual confirmation of the twister. Yet, the Weather Service trusted what they were seeing on radar, and were therefore able to provide those in Millbury and surrounding communities with nearly 30 minutes of advanced warning before the twister struck, giving most in the town plenty of time to find shelter and ride out the storm. With the area police department destroyed and some of Lake Township's ambulances compromised during the storm, the area had to rely on the help of adjacent towns in the immediate aftermath of the storms. First responders from Perrysburg, Oregon, Toledo, and everywhere in between rushed into Millbury and Moline after the tornado to rescue survivors and treat those who were injured. Their assistance was paramount to the survival of many, and provided an essential service to a community when they needed it most. First responders and residents worked through the night. By sunrise, the full extent of what had happened became apparent. It looked like a war zone. Volunteers from around the area poured in to help rebuild. Though rebuilding was slow, in time much of the town would slowly be built back. This is well documented on Google Street View, where we can see before and after imagery for much of the tornado's path. A good example of this can actually be found near the intersection of Bradner Road and Cherry Street. As we can see here, this home has obviously been rebuilt within the span of just a few years. The former structure, which was comprised of a house as well as 2 garages, was completely destroyed during the twister. In 2011, it had mostly been rebuilt. Trees nearby look very odd, as you may notice. Looking at older imagery, you can see that it was previously a very thick forest that covered most of this area. However, now it's full of trees whose lower branches have obviously been destroyed by the twister, leading to a rather odd appearance. One of many good examples of just how narrow the tornado was can be seen with this house right next door. Although it appears as if there were probably some sort of repairs following the tornado, it at least appears here on Google imagery that the house was largely untouched, with very little changing between the different years. While that house has been left mostly untouched, the wooded area in between it and the other destroyed house has now been reduced to basically an open field, while previously it was actually a rather heavily wooded area. Another area with very striking damage and very striking before and afters is around Case and Maryland Avenues here. If we go back, you can see that just like before, this area also had many trees, but after the tornado, most of them were completely gone, knocked down during the twister. Alongside the trees, this lovely house here was also completely destroyed by the tornado, and as of 2011 had yet to be rebuilt. Just an empty lot standing in its place. Even as we approach the present, this home has still yet to be rebuilt. It has always remained an empty lot, and nobody has elected to rebuild the house that formerly stood on it. In 2007, just next door, we can see that this house used to be a small ranch-style home. also surrounded by trees. In 2011, the home had been completely rebuilt, now a 2-story house, but all the trees around it have been completely knocked down. Jumping down to Main Street, it's once again a similar story. This 2-story home in 2007 was completely destroyed by the tornado in 2010 and once again had been completely rebuilt just a few years after. Next door, we find another well-taken-care-of family house. Before the tornado, it was a tall 2-story home. Afterwards, it was reduced to rubble, and at the time of this imagery had yet to be rebuilt. Note the trees in the background. You can see where the core of the tornado went through. Also, a very good illustration of just how narrow it was. Lake High School has similarly been rebuilt. While passing through Millbury to record portions of this video, we passed by the school campus. The school looks new and modern. An oblivious passerby would have no idea of what transpired here if they didn't have any prior knowledge of the area. But for those that call this place home, they will never forget. Just down the street from Lake High School is the Lake Township Administration Building, the structure that was built to replace the former police department. At this site is a memorial to the victims of the June 5th tornado. 7 pillars stand here in front of the structure, each recognizing someone who lost their lives on that fateful day. A plaque stands in front of them, with the names of the victims engraved on it, keeping their memories alive. Its base is made of bricks salvaged from the former police station, and it faces in the direction the tornado is moving. Part of the concrete walkway in front of the columns is triangle-shaped, dark gray in color to symbolize the tornado. The triangle is set at 65 degrees to represent the day the disaster happened, 6/5/2010. Disasters like the one in Millbury are seldom remembered by those who didn't live through them firsthand. Everybody remembers the Joplins, the Moores, and the Geralds, but oftentimes the Millburys, the Pitchers, and the Oakfields fall through the cracks, left to be forgotten in the sands of time. This is why I feel it's important that the people of Millbury get their story told, so people can see what these communities have been through and what they've overcome. I also feel it's important to tell these stories so the memories of those who lost their lives can live on. But I don't want these people to simply be turned into statistics. These were real people with lives of their own, personalities, stories, families, who just so happened to lose their lives in this tornado. Making content about disasters like this, it always feels like you're balancing on the edge of morality. I don't want our content to feel like it's taking advantage of these people whose lives have been lost, which is why for a while now I've tried to prioritize telling the stories of those who died, saying their names, informing you all about who they were, and most importantly, treating them like who they are, people. By doing this, it gives you, the viewers, a better idea of the gravity of these catastrophes, and it makes them feel real. It allows those who watch the opportunity to put themselves into the situation, to visualize and to feel what it may have felt like for those who really did live through the tornado. Through this, we as humans can get a better understanding of the world around us, while learning something about ourselves and others. The people here in Millbury seem to have a better appreciation for life than most. When you've come so close to death and seen the level of destruction that comes with violent tornadoes firsthand, suddenly the minute things in our lives become amplified. We appreciate the finer things in life and wake up every morning just happy to be here. Sometimes you don't quite know what you've got until it's gone. And indeed, while Millbury has always been a tight-knit community, it was the complete destruction of their town that brought them entirely together. Like a single unit, they've marched forward into the future, building their town back better, all while remembering those who were lost in the process. Caitlin Kranz, the 2010 valedictorian of Lake High School, and the daughter of Ted Kranz, walked across the stage at nearby Owens Community College to accept her high school diploma, just 3 days after the tornado took her father's life. Overcome by emotion, she began to cry, but was quickly met by a community member, willing to provide comfort for her in her time of need. Indeed, she represented the entire Lake Township community, all of whom gathered around their neighbors to help them get through the grief and process the disaster at hand. As of 2023, the Millbury tornado is the last violent tornado to occur within the National Weather Service office in Cleveland's warning forecast area, and the most recent to occur in northwest Ohio. Millbury remains just as ordinary as it ever was. It's still quiet, football is still king, but it now exists as a quiet town with a tragic past. A past that it has overcome for a better present and a better future. From Millbury, Ohio, this has been Overcast. Thank you for watching.
Caitlin M. Kranz.